This plugin came out and I instantly bought it, and I know it sounds like bullshit, and I'm not going to say game changer. If there was a game changer, I'm not going to say it. I could actually mix in the box. So it's funny, I got a couple comments online about this one. All right. So, quick funny story about this. It's not a funny story. I've actually told this story a couple times. This is the Waves SSL-e channel. This is like the OG SSL Channelstrip from Waves. And I think this came out maybe like, I don't know, 2009 maybe. I was mixing on a SSL 4000. That was a board that I worked on every day. I worked at the Chop Shop with Scott Humphrey. Long story short, when I started working with him, he had another board. We ended up getting an SSL 4000. All my favorite mixers, all my favorite producers, they worked on SSL 4000s. And we decided that we're going to get one. We got one, and I fell in love with the thing. When you turn a knob on the SSL 4000, it did what I wanted it to do. So when I would EQ something, I was like, it's not like, oh, that's not quite there. I got to keep turning. It's like, no. It was like, I just crank high end. You just crank the knob, and you're like, cool, there it is. You turn the compressor on, and you're like, that's the way I want it to sound. This thing just fits with me. So there was a time, probably maybe like 5 years after we got that SSL. So I'd spent a considerable amount of time on that SSL when I started having to do mixes in the box. That was right around the time of Guitar Hero. And guys like me were starting to do a lot of like stem mixing, where we had to like match original mixes and then stem them out. And for Guitar Hero and Rock Band, I was working on a project at the time that we were doing a ton of those types of mixes for. And mixing on a console just wasn't efficient. It wasn't effective, just wasn't possible. So I had to learn how to mix in the box. This plugin had just come out, and I had tried mixing in the box before. And I had a couple plugins, but most of my work was done outboard stuff. And I had a really hard time mixing in the box. For whatever reason, it's like no matter what I did, it just didn't sound the way that I wanted to sound. And I wasn't enjoying myself, and I was mousing around, and I was just like using like other plugins. And this plugin came out, and I instantly bought it. And I got an Avid Icon control surface, and I basically like set up my whole Pro Tools session and the control surface with this plugin, and just tried to replicate the SSL 4000 experience as much as I could. And I know it sounds like bullshit, and I'm not going to say game changer because it's, well, this way. If there was a game changer, I'm not going to say it. I could actually mix in the box. And I realized later that it wasn't just about the sound, because there were other plugins that sounded good. And like one of the plugins that I really liked back then, I still like now, is the Metric Halo Channelstrip. That's a great sounding channel strip. And I had that plugin back in the day, but the look of it didn't, like, I was used to staring at a console all day. So now when you're looking at a plugin that just kind of looks more like a plugin, I didn't like it. And I didn't like using a mouse. So when I was able to get this plugin, which sounds the way I'm familiar with, it looks exactly what I'm used to staring at all day, having fun, and now I've got a control surface that I can control all this stuff with knobs. It was a switch flipped, and I'm like, holy shit, I can actually get good sounding mixes in the box, and I don't want to like poke my eyes out with a fork. It actually was enjoyable. This for me is as close to home. This plugin for me, it's so much a part of me that although there are more SSL channel strips. I mean, Waves has 2 other SSL channel strips. Brainworks has channel strips. SSL's got the channel strips. There are other channel strips out there that sound like an SSL, but the interface doesn't necessarily look like an SSL. There are so many things that do what this does. And some people ask me, why are you still using the original? Isn't there something better? Like, don't you like this better or that better or whatever? And again, talking about why we pick plugins. I have tried those plugins, and yes, they sound good. Do they sound better? Yeah, maybe a little bit. Are the interfaces different? Yeah. Do I like some of them? Yes. Are they familiar? Not really. They're familiar enough to where it's like, yeah, I could probably get used to it. But this does everything I want it to do. To me, this doesn't have a void that I need to fill. So if it's so much ingrained in my workflow, why would I change that? And that's why I still use it. It sounds great. Is it the most accurate SSL plugin? I don't care. I don't care. Right now, this plugin, when I turn a knob, I know exactly what it's going to sound like in my head before I even turn it. And for me, that is invaluable. That is the most valuable part of this plugin.